3/4 of an hour later, Simon left the gang of his mates on the wreck, the name they gave to the recreation field. He and John and Peter and Jonah had been against a couple of Year 8s and Gordon and Will. It had been a good game, and eventually Gordon and Will's team had triumphed. Triumphed is a bit strong. They scored 2 goals more than John and Peter's team that Simon, was in. It was a fun knockabout, despite there being no referee. They had only disputed 1 goal, which would have hit the post had they have had posts instead of jumpers chucked on the ground. At least, that's what Peter said, and he was playing rush goalie. Peter lived 3 houses away from Simon, so they naturally walked home together after the match. "You have a phone, don't you?" asked Simon, not trying to give anything away about his own phone. "Did have," answered Peter, "but my toddler brother balanced it on the edge of his bath 3 nights ago. I mean, how am I supposed to know he is going to take it off my bed and then walk around talking to the world on it?" "Talking to the world?" questioned Simon. "What do you mean? Who was he talking to? Which country? Why?" No, Si. Si was what people called Simon when they couldn't be bothered with using 2 syllables. When Terry gets a phone, all he wants to do is to talk into it. He isn't expecting a reply. He just walks round the house, gabbling away. Suddenly, he's into a great adventure. He doesn't need a real connection. He doesn't need it to be on. He just needs to have the phone in his hand. So what happened to it? Simon was bouncing the ball as he spoke. Dear little Terry walked into the bathroom, just wanting to get one of his slippers from there, puts the phone on the edge of the bath so he can put his slipper, hits the phone into the water. When I told Mum about it, she said something like, "Didn't I tell you to put it out of his reach the last time he tried to drop it down the loo? It is no good you complaining." And as she said, I knew I was wasting my breath. So, for the moment, I have no phone. Peter looked sad, but he accepted that he had been warned. "So what are you going to do?" asked Simon. "Oh, that's easy," answered Peter. "I go without until someone decides that I can have another one, or that one dries out, or see you, Si. See you on the bus on Monday morning." Sighing, he sloped off again to his house and was gone. Simon bounced the ball a bit more and walked into his house. He wanted to go and check on his phone, but there were other chores that needed to be sorted. "Lay the table, Simon," his mother called out as she heard him come in. "What are we having for supper tonight?" he foolishly asked. "What day is it?" she called back with a kind of exasperated tone in her voice. "Friday," said Simon. "And what do we always have on Fridays?" Lily, his 19-year-old sister, who was studying at a local college, joined in with his mum, and they both yelled, "Fish and chips!" "Doesn't Dad always bring back fish and chips on a Friday evening? And then doesn't he always do the washing up so that Mum has a night off from preparing food and dealing with dishes?" Simon blotted out any more of this stuff, and Jess went and got the knives and forks out of the kitchen drawer and laid the table. Then he got 4 glasses and the water jug and put these on the table as well. "And don't forget the napkins," called his mother. "I don't see a need for napkins. We never have them in with school meals, so why should we have one here?" Simon had already reached for the napkins and rings and thrown them into the places. "I'm home," he heard his father call, and then chaos reigned while his mother grabbed the fish and chips, kissed her husband, divided up the portions, put them on plates, pushed them into the micro, and got all the food piping hot before she and Lily carried the 4 plates to the table. Meanwhile, Dad had run his hands under the tap and then removed his jacket and was adjusting the knives and forks so they looked neat and straight. Simon had gone up to his bedroom and was staring at the phone. "Simon, have you washed your hands?" yelled his dad. His mind was on the phone, but he wandered to the bathroom and let cold water take away all the germs in the world that had attached themselves to him. As he came downstairs wiping his hands on his jeans, his father leaned over him and kissed him on the top of his head. "Hello, son. Had a good day, or half day?" Simon wanted to tell everyone that he had bought a phone at a car boot sale. But then he didn't know what their reactions were going to be. "I got a great football, and we went out and had a game on the rec. I scored a goal, but it wasn't enough to win the game. Still, it's a good weight, and we had some fun." "How was your day, Dad?" Dad stopped in his tracks. "What have you broken?" he asked. Simon looked puzzled. "The only time you ever asked about my day is when you've broken something and wish to divert attention from that object." His dad was half smiling, but only half. Lily changed the subject, and before Simon could worry about closer questioning and things in his room, they were all chomping down on microwaved hot fish and chips with vinegar for those who liked it, and Simon liked it. His mother never put vinegar on her chips. He considered her strange. She put pepper on her chips. Pepper! Now that was really odd. But then his mother had been born in New Zealand, and they did most of things upside down there. It was Friday night. There was homework to do, but it didn't need to be done right away. There were 2 more days when it might be done, before it was actually done on the last possible time, sometime on Sunday evening. He and his dad sat down to watch some football, while his mum and Lily sat in the kitchen discussing all manner of 19-year-old issues before one of her college friends came round and they went out. At that point, Mum came and joined them, but flicked on a side light rather than glued herself to the TV like him and his dad. The game finished at 9:45, and while his dad was giving him a playful cuddle, he picked up on the issue of asking what sort of day he had had. Simon needed to think quickly. My geography teacher was going on again about work in China. I just wondered about your work here. This seemed to be a remarkably good answer, and his dad gave him a loving slap and sent him off to bed. His mother accepted a peck on the side of her face and warmly wished him a good night, but not before she had reminded him to have a good shower. And talking about work, don't allow your toothbrush to be unemployed tonight. Dad laughed, thinking he'd made quite a good joke. Simon groaned, but thought that tonight he must remember to put toothpaste and water on his toothbrush before he put it back in the rack. He might even introduce it to his teeth. In bed, after all his ablutions had been done, he placed 4 books on his duvet and pushed his phone under the biggest of them. He had already disconnected it from the charger and now decided to experiment. He flicked through his diary. It was this year's and had notes in it for 17 days before he'd got bored and had got involved in other things. At the back of it, he had written some addresses. Peter, from 3 doors along, was there with his telephone, 2 numbers. But Peter's mobile was damply broken. Simon could try ringing the house phone, but if he did, then he would only get Peter's mother or father, and a good telling off for ringing them so late. He only had 3 names and addresses in his book, and the only mobile number was his cousin Robert in Blackpool. Robert, like Simon, had an older sister, and she wouldn't be sharing a bedroom with him. Simon phoned the number. He could hear it ringing. It rang twice, and then he heard his cousin answer. "Hello, Robert here." "Hey, Robert, this is Simon." So far, so good. He could chat to Robert without any trouble. But there was trouble. Instead of just being at the end of the telephone, Robert was sitting on Simon's armchair, on top of his clothes, halfway across Simon's bedroom. "Oh my God, how did you get here? You're supposed to be in Blackpool," gasped Simon as he pressed the button that cut the connection. Just as quickly as he had arrived, Robert was gone. Simon was stunned by what had happened. He knew that he wanted to stop Robert. Should he try to ring back? He turned off the phone and took out the SIM card. He thought. Something tricky is going on with this phone. He went to the toilet, then back to bed, hid the phone again, then turned out the light and went to sleep.